Hello and welcome to another exciting release notes video from Velt. Our engineering team has been very hard at work, so we have a lot of new features to cover in this video. We're on version 1.0.112 for the SDK and version 1.0.127 for the types library, so make sure to update. Now onto the features. The first feature we're going to cover is an option to disable the shadow DOM. So what exactly does this mean? Well, we are using a shadow DOM in our SDK components, so that if your application has some CSS, it won't accidentally override the styling of our SDK components. So this is an example of the comment dialog, one of our components. And if you have some CSS rules, for example, to change the default font size or the font type or some padding, those rules won't affect our SDK components. However, if you want your rules to override our SDK styling, then you can disable the shadow DOM, and then your rules will override. So if you change the font, then the font will carry over to our components. And to do so, you can either set a certain props to false. For example, if you want it on the comments pin, you set pin shadow DOM to false. If you want it on the dialog, you type dialog shadow DOM false. Or if you want it on the sidebar, you do shadow DOM false on the comment sidebar. And we have some API methods to do so. So that is the option to disable the shadow DOM. Now onwards to the next feature. We have a method to unsubscribe from subscriptions. We already had this feature created, but we just didn't document it. So now we're officially documenting it. So we have several subscriptions in our SDK to subscribe to events such as comments being posted, notifications, if someone read or deleted something. We have those types of subscription events. And if you want to unsubscribe from any of those, you just take the return object and you do unsubscribe. This works on all of the subscriptions in our SDK. It's the same format. Just take the return object and use the unsubscribe method, and then you will stop subscribing to that specific subscription. Now let's talk about the next feature. So we added notifications for huddle, create, and join events. So there's two things here I want to talk about. First is notifications, and the second is huddle. So what is a notification? Well, we have this notifications component, and it will basically show your users important things that have happened. For example, if someone mentioned them in a comment, if someone read their comment or deleted their comment or replied, they'll get the notifications here. And we added some new notifications if someone created or joined a huddle that they're on. So what is the huddle? That's the next demo I'm going to show. Is we have a feature called huddle, and you can do audio huddles just for voice, or you can do video huddles for screen and voice. So let me do a quick demo. If I do a video huddle, anyone on the screen will be prompted to join. And then I'm going to mute myself so that there's no echo. But essentially, I can talk with anyone else on this page, just like a Zoom call. And this will trigger a notification in that notification component. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware. So we added a feature to check for audio and video permissions on huddles. So this just means if people are on the huddle and they haven't done their audio or video permissions, we just remind them to turn them on so that they can actually experience huddle and hear each other or see each other. Otherwise, the huddle experience won't work correctly. Now, there's several more features related to huddle that I'm going to talk about. The next two are options to disable the chat and flock mode features. So let's talk about that. In the huddle, if you click this button here, you'll basically open a chat window, and then anyone on the huddle can have access to this chat and see it, and people can type notes back and forth, and it's temporary. So after the huddle's gone, the chat is erased. We don't save that data. So you can disable this if you don't want this, and it's enabled by default. Just set a property to false. Just set a property to false, or you can do enable chat or disable chat through an API method to turn that on or off. Now for the option to disable the flock mode feature, let me talk about that real quick. So flock mode is a way to essentially have to take control of someone else's screen. When you move your page up and down or click through a link or navigate, the other person who's following you, their screen will also move up and down and go through links just as you're moving. So for example, if I want to follow like John, click on the avatar start. So now I'm following the other person. I'm following John. So you can see if I go down, it goes down. If I go up, it's going up. So basically, it's really cool. You can take control of their screen, and whenever you move, their screen will move. And it's great if you're doing a demo or walking through some kind of PowerPoint. The people who are following you can just follow along and watch what you're doing. So you can enable or disable this feature. It's disabled by default, and you can enable it by setting flock mode on avatar click equals true, or using some API methods. And then if your users click on the little avatar of their teammates, they can start following their screen. So onwards to the next feature, we added support to set a custom order of locations to sort by in the comment sidebar. So what exactly does this mean? Well, if you open the sidebar, it shows you all the comments. And then once you have a lot of comments, you want to start filtering these comments. So we added a filter. And for some users, they end up having lots of locations. And sometimes locations, they often rename them to pages. But if you have like a million pages and you want to sort the pages by what's most important, for example, maybe your home page, you want that at the top, and your secondary importantly pages are below that, and your least important pages on the bottom, you can reorganize those by setting this order and then passing in the IDs of your locations so that they'll be ranked by that order instead of being semi-random. All right, the next feature is a configuration for unread comments. So we have an unread comments indicator, and now you can configure it into two modes, minimal or verbose. So in verbose mode, you'll have this red badge that says unread, and in minimal mode, it'll just be a little tiny red dot. So you can choose which one you want. If you want it to be bigger and louder, use the badge with unread. If you want it to be tiny, use the little red dot, whatever matches the feel of your product. And another feature we added is a hook for use unset document ID. I covered this in a previous release, but you can essentially unset the document ID, which will turn off all of Velt's SDK features. And we had a method on the client object to do so, but we just added a hook that's a lot easier. You just import the hook and then you just use it, and then it will work a lot easier than having to set up a use effect. And now the last feature of this release notes video is an option to specify the specific version of the Velt SDK for React. And the way you do that is we have a config props on the Velt provider. And if you pass in a specific version, we'll just use that version in your app. And you just set the number here, and then it will work like that. So if you don't want some of the latest features we added, you can roll back to a previous version to make sure it's more stable. And those have been all the features in this week's release notes video. Stay tuned for next week's video, and thank you for watching.